My boss tried to steal 3 years of my work and pass it off as his own to the entire company. He thought I had no proof. He had no idea I'd been quietly saving everything, and that one meeting would end his career instead of mine. Let me back up and tell you how it started, because the betrayal was years in the making. I worked as a data analyst at a mid-sized company for about 4 years. My manager, a man I'll call Greg, was the kind of boss who took all the credit and none of the blame. If a project went well, he presented it to the executives like he'd done it himself. If it went badly, suddenly it was the team's fault, usually mine specifically. For a long time I let it slide, because I was young, I needed the job, and I kept telling myself that good work speaks for itself. But good work doesn't speak for itself when someone keeps putting their hand over its mouth. The biggest project of my career was a forecasting system I built almost entirely on my own. It took me the better part of 2 years. I designed the model, wrote the code, cleaned the data, tested it, and refined it through dozens of versions. Greg's contribution was sitting in status meetings and nodding. That was it. But every time leadership asked about it, he spoke as if he had architected the whole thing. I'd sit there silently, watching him describe my work in vague terms because he didn't actually understand how any of it functioned. Here's the thing, though. I'm a careful person. From the very beginning, I documented everything. Every version of the model was timestamped and saved. Every important decision was logged in emails that I sent to Greg and the team, explaining what I was doing and why. I wasn't doing it to set a trap. I was doing it because that's just how I work. But it turned out to be the most important habit of my life. The breaking point came when the company announced a big internal awards event. Leadership wanted to recognize the forecasting project as the innovation of the year. And Greg, sensing a spotlight, went all in. He scheduled a presentation for the entire executive team and the whole department. He told everyone he would be walking them through, in his words, the system he developed. When I heard that, something in me went very calm. Not angry, calm, because I realized he'd finally overreached in a way I could prove. He wasn't just taking a little credit anymore. He was about to stand in front of the entire company and claim 2 years of my life as his own creation. And he was going to do it in a room full of people who could ask technical questions he couldn't answer. So I did something simple. I prepared, not to sabotage him, but to be ready when the moment came. I organized every file, every time-stamped version of the model, going back to the very first prototype, all under my name. I gathered the email chain, 2 years of it, where I explained every part of the system to Greg, and where his replies were things like, sounds good, and okay, keep going. I had the original design documents, written in my handwriting, photographed, and dated. I didn't plan to ambush him. I just made sure that if the truth came up, I could show it instantly. The day of the presentation arrived. The room was packed. Executives in the front row, the whole department behind them. Greg stood up in a sharp suit, looking thrilled, and began presenting my work as his masterpiece. For the first 10 minutes, he stuck to the script I could tell he'd memorized. Vague, high-level, impressive sounding. Then the chief technology officer, a sharp woman who actually understood the technical side, started asking real questions. She asked how the model handled a specific kind of seasonal anomaly. Greg froze. He gave a vague non-answer. She pressed further, asking about the method behind a key calculation. He started sweating. He fumbled. He said something that was not just wrong, but obviously wrong to anyone who understood the system. The room got quiet in that uncomfortable way. People could feel that something was off. The man presenting the innovation of the year couldn't answer basic questions about how it worked. And the CTO, not unkindly, said, "Greg, you built this. Surely you can explain how the core engine functions." He couldn't. And in his panic, he made the worst possible choice. He looked at me, sitting in the third row, and said, "Well, the team handled some of the implementation details." That was my opening. Calmly, I raised my hand and said, "I'm happy to answer that. I designed and built that engine, so I can walk you through it." And then I did. I explained the seasonal anomaly handling. I explained the calculation she'd asked about. I explained the architecture clearly and confidently, because it was mine and I knew every inch of it. The CTO's eyebrows went up. She asked another hard question. I answered it instantly. And another. I answered that too. Then she asked the question that ended it. She looked between Greg and me and said, "I'm a little confused. Who actually built this system?" The room went silent. And I made a decision. I didn't attack Greg. I just told the truth, plainly. I built it over the last 2 years. I have all the version history and design documents if it would be helpful. I also kept the project emails documenting the development, which I sent to Greg throughout. You could feel the temperature in the room change. The executives understood immediately what had just happened. Greg had stood up in front of the entire company and claimed someone else's 2 years of work as his own and gotten caught in real time, in front of the people he was trying to impress. Greg tried to recover. He stammered something about leadership and oversight. But it was over. Everyone in that room had watched him fail to explain his own supposed creation, and then watched the real creator explain it effortlessly. Here's what happened after. I was asked to send my documentation to the CTO and to HR. I did, calmly and professionally. The version history and the email chain told the entire story without me having to say a single bitter word. Within a few weeks, Greg was quietly moved out of his management role and, not long after, left the company entirely. I won't pretend I felt sad about it. Me? The CTO personally asked me to lead the next phase of the project, with a real title and a real raise to match. The recognition that Greg tried to steal ended up coming to me directly, in front of everyone, which is so much more than I ever would have gotten if he'd just shared the credit honestly. The lesson I took from this is simple. Document your work, not out of paranoia, but out of self-respect. For years I thought staying quiet and letting my work speak for itself was the honorable path. But work can't speak when someone keeps stealing its voice. The day I let the evidence speak instead, everything changed. So tell me, was I wrong to expose him in the middle of his own presentation? Or did a man who tried to steal 2 years of my work deserve exactly what he got? Let me know what you would have done.